This episode is brought to you by BeWaterSmart.info. Make your trees summer strong by watering them slowly and deeply using a soaker hose or drip irrigation at least once a month. Learn more ways to make your yard summer strong at BeWaterSmart.info.
Look at that plant. I want you to know that everything was grown in my garden. Don't touch that plant!
Is it poisonous?
She'll become part of the plant.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Garden Hour. I'm your host, Marlene.
And I'm your co-host, Bruce.
And today we are going to discuss cool ideas for hot summer days. And joining us is an expert in this, Cheryl Buckwalter. She is a landscape liaison. She's a longtime garden landscape consultant, educator, and designer. And she was just interviewed for the BeWaterSmart.info webpage by Debbie Arrington, all about how to cool your yard for hot summer days. And that's not only like, planting. There's some pretty cool tips in there, that if you're really tired of the heat already, then this might be for you. And I know every summer I live in the Central Valley, for some reason, it gets more and more difficult. I don't know if I'm just over it or truly it's getting worse. But we were just discussing this year is actually not that bad. So thanks for joining us, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I always like, as we were discussing, and if anyone's listened, I always like to know how people ended up where they're at instead of just getting into the topic because, being a landscape consultant, and then specifically in this area, and then being an expert on how to create this oasis when it's really hot. So what is your background? Is it more design and art, or is it more plants? And did you grow up gardening? Go ahead.
Well, I grew up, Marlene and Bruce, saving plants mostly. People would give me plants that were on their last leg. And so I would save them. But no, I was not into gardening or any of that. I basically came from the business world, administration, part-time. Part of my history is at the UC Davis Medical Center. I have also been a property manager where I was the staff person to architectural review committees for homeowner associations. But it was in around 2000, that I was a property manager, and I had been wherever my husband and I would move to, because we did move quite a bit. And wherever we moved, I was always working on the landscape, though, mostly design and plants and so forth. I was living in Elk Grove at the time, and I had created this berm of soil in the backyard because I thought it would look ever so neat to have that topography. And my neighbors said to me, have you buried your husband there? That's what it looks like. And so that inspired me
to bury your husband,
to go to school and to learn. I will say, though, as I think back, I have always been committed to and captivated with saving water, with plants, yes, but in school, back then, years ago, back then, xeriscaping, not zero, but xeriscaping, the principles still basically apply. However, I was already designing. I was at Sierra College and then also American River College, started design classes, of course, got into the whole, botany and the plants and so forth. And when I graduated, and my emphasis, I guess I should say, and I hope I'm not taking too much time, Marlene.
No, not at all.
Okay. My emphasis, as I mentioned, I always was conscious of water conservation and efficiency. And, but I love thinking back because even as I teach classes today, I look at materials, handouts, and all that I created back then, and it's just the same. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching the same thing. But thank you very much, people, for getting excited about it finally.
Finally, you're like, I remember growing up in San Diego, and it was a brand new house, and everyone, all of our neighbors were putting in, the roses and all this stuff, which I loved.
Yeah.
And my dad was bringing me to nurseries, and he was buying native plants or drought tolerant plants. And he was one of the first to do. I'm like, why are we getting this plant? Look at that gaudy flower on that plant. And looking back, I'm like, oh, he was already trying to save water back then, even though.
Wonderful.
You were
Wow.
way ahead of your times.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, where did you go to school? You went to.
Well, I grew up on the East Coast, and I went to school in upstate New York, and I was SUNY Binghamton State University in New York, and I got a botany degree. And of course, with a botany degree, I ended up being an optometrist. But
Didn't you go to school? Was it American River too?
Oh, you mean recently?
Yeah.
I actually took some landscape courses and some irrigation courses at American River.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where we met Cheryl Buckwalter, who is the
Oh, yeah.
You know
head
Chelo?
of-
I was wondering about that.
and he, of course, joined our board too. And he taught me a lot about the irrigation process, and never did finish the landscape design career, but I got a lot of background from that.
Yeah. I've always found that the landscape design is the part that does not come the easiest to me. And when people have asked, oh, can you do a design for me? I would say, okay. And then I would come up with the design. And every time they wanted to change it, I fell in love with the design. And I'm like, no, you can't change. I didn't tell them that.
It's my design.
It's my design.
Well, and for me, I was studying, horticulture with an emphasis in design, and so that's how I started. But I found that I love to volunteer and not charge.
Yeah.
Which is a problem when running a
Same.
business.
That's a bit of a problem.
Same.
And then I really got to start working with water providers in this region when the then program manager at the Regional Water Authority and bewatersmart.info now, but there was a conference. I think it was Eco Landscape California at the time had a conference, and she came up and said, we're doing this Water Smart Makeover contest idea. And so we have all these companies volunteering, but we need a project manager. And I'm like, well, okay, I just moved back here from back east, and I don't have a lot on my plate right now. I'm not sure what a project manager is, but I'll do it. And that's how it just kind of kicked off. I've been so fortunate to work with water providers in this region for years now. And so I love the variety. And so anyway, that's kind of part of the movement that I had.
Got it. Well, what I sort of liked a lot about this article is, there's a lot of information out there about gardening with low water, which is really important, and then lists of plants. And of course, we'll touch upon that in here. But this is also, these are also tips on just how to make a cooling environment besides just, saving water by using certain types of plants. So I liked sort of these tips. So I sort of want to just go into sort of the article and some of the key points. And so we'll start with plants, obviously. And the first thing I want to start with is evapotranspiration.
Okay.
Because as, a scientist, a plant one. So, I always say, well, that's not a real scientist, but there's the plant biologist. I'm a horticulturalist. So explain what evapotranspiration is, why it's important, and how it helps with a cooling environment.
Yes. Trees aren't the only plants, so to speak, that really help keep us cooler because of their shade and so forth. But, all of the vegetation in our landscapes, the trees, the shrubs, the ground covers, everything goes through this process of evapotranspiration. And Marlene, it's a combination, of loss of water from the soil, which equals evaporation, which is a term we might be more familiar with. And then the leaves transpire in combination with the evaporation, water loss from the soil. The leaves transpire, or they give off water vapor from their leaves. And so on the leaf surfaces, and predominantly especially with trees, they're on the underside of the
Mhm.
leaves, but there are these little, called stomates or stomata, these
Mhm.
cells that open and close, and that's how the plants give off this vapor into the atmosphere. So as you can imagine, if you're at a park and they have this spraying vapor, these little misters around, to me I envision it that way, because I envision that the plants, the soil is evaporating moisture, and then the plants are transpiring this water vapor. So that goes into the atmosphere, and that provides the cooling effect.
Mhm. Can I just say my favorite pun that I tell students all the time?
What?
Just yesterday, we have one of the big bio classes come through, and we have to talk about plant morphology. So when I tell them, what has more stomata, leaves or stem, and then I mention, stems have it, but then I joke, what's stomata with that? Sorry.
Or what's
I love
stomata
that.
do, as they say.
What's stomata with that?
I
Sorry.
always say, you say stomata, I say stomata.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, the
Anyway.
openings that basically allow for photosynthesis to happen, what the plants are doing is water's being released at the same time. And everyone knows, like, when dogs pant, we sweat. It's just, it's a cooling mechanism.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's very interesting. I encourage listeners to check out the whole subject of stomates and how plants function in that way. To me, it's fascinating.
So I actually was watching a YouTube on a tornado, and then I learned that there's something called corn sweat, where it actually increases. I think the humidity could increase almost 5% in the area when these because there's so much transpiration happening from the corn, and it's called corn sweat. And I was like, learn something new every day. So that's a plant just massively doing transpiration, that it affects the environment so much around that.
Yes.
And of course, a real water thirsty plant.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Corn. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 So, I mean, that's why when you go into our greenhouse at work, it's high humidity. And the more plants you have, the higher humidity, because they're basically transpiring water out. So they create their own environment.
Yes.
So what do you tell people when they say, well, then isn't a lawn a great thing? Right? Because it's a whole entire ground of plant.
Yes. Well, there's not much diversity there, right? And one thing that I think of is how important plant diversity is, and how we need to support all the beneficial life in our gardens and landscapes. And so I think that it offers so much more to the plants rather than turf, that is generally a high water use plant, and each one of those leaf blades is considered a plant. But I just think of how monotonous that is.
Yeah.
And okay, I'll say boring, but
one can.
I mean, there are some, when there's a need, have it a manageable size, and irrigate it efficiently. Please, please, please.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I go to. I mean, you can have so much more variety. Plants can be so much more beneficial to our environment and creatures and everything. So that's kind of what I start with. And I try to say, like I said, if you need it, is there really a need? And do you need it to be the size of a football field? I kind of doubt it.
I doubt it. Unless you have that many kids that you have a football team. Right?
Unless you're playing football in your backyard.
Yeah, there you go. So evapotranspiration. So basically, it's not just trees. That's all plants are going to do it. They're going to create and cool.
Correct.
And then, plants, because of the diversity, they support pollinators and all the beneficials. What is another? I mean, I have a list of tips, but what one do you want to hit on? Thinking is sort of like, this is one people overlook, but is really important.
One people overlook relative to cool ideas and tips.
Yeah, something that they just don't think about doing.
Sure. Well, I mean, one thing, for instance, is a water feature.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, I love water features that are, they recycle the water, and the pump is generated. It's a solar generated pump, and you can usually adjust what the sound is on many of them. And so, it can sound like a little babbling brook. It could sound like a tumultuous waterfall. But the babbling brook is much more calming. And it really does. Again, some of that water is evaporating into the air. So that goes back to cooling the air, but also it's tapping into our senses, hearing, seeing, and even feeling the water. And so I love water features. I think sometimes people don't think about it. And even in, if you live in an apartment or a condominium, you could have little tabletop water features.
Yeah,
and
I've seen those. They're cute.
You want to make it so that it's not splashing all over everything, because sometimes they will. But even that, and that's one thing that I think people don't think about so much.
I have cats, so we have the water fountains inside the cat ones, and
we have one of those too.
Yeah, and even that sounds like a little bubbling creek, except for when it's running low, then it's annoying.
Oh,
but,
isn't it annoying?
Yeah,
Then it just hums.
Yeah, but isn't it weird how just even a little bit of water just gives you that? I mean, even you don't need the full lake. I mean, it'd be nice. You don't need a full swimming pool. You just need something to even almost just put your hand in, or just to hear it, or just to see it. And it's weird how your mind just goes, oh.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And even outside my office, I have a small water feature with a recirculating pump. So I can open the door and I can hear that all day long.
Yeah. So it doesn't need to be this crazy expensive thing.
No.
In fact, Bruce and I just happened to be talking about water feature pump. Bruce, you made a ceramic one, right?
Yes, I do ceramics. And so it's coming out of the kiln Monday. I made a ceramic wall water fountain. And, Marlene said, why don't you have us a solar powered pump? Well, it's too late. I bought it already. But I think there's just a little bit of water that it has, just like you say, it's very relaxing. In fact, people often use the sound of water running to help them fall asleep. But it doesn't
recorded sound, I hope, Bruce.
Yes. No, yeah. Right. Well, you could have one right in your bedroom.
Or right outside. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's really important to also note that ponds and water fountains, they don't really use a lot of water because it's being recycled. And people often say, oh my gosh, you're using this tremendous amount of water for your pond. And no, you're really not.
And you see birds going to it and giving little bird baths, as long as you then don't see a cat stalking them and you're like, oh no. But
and that is a good point, because part of a design feature for so many landscapes is a dry creek bed, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so even with that, instead of it always being dry, we can install a recirculating pump,
right?
And a basin, if you will, for the water to be in. And then your dry stream bed or creek bed suddenly becomes a haven for the sound, feeling cooler, as you were saying, benefiting visitors, pollinators, hummingbirds, everybody.
And the solar pumps, they're getting pretty good, right? I mean, you don't even need a electrical source. I haven't used one of the solar powered pumps before, but I imagine if it's like the solar powered lights, that it will run, if it's a sunny day, that it's probably going to support it throughout the day.
Right. And our springs and summer, we have long sunny days.
Yeah.
And so, definitely. I mean, I think it's worth it, because the other thing is we're also helping to save energy.
Yes.
We're consuming less energy. So I think that's a good factor too.
And it allows you to put the pond wherever you'd like. If you
I know.
might want to put
That's
it in.
huge.
I have a large lawn. It's not really a lawn. It's a weed lawn. But you know what? It's easier to take care of than a lawn. And I would love to put a pond right in the middle of it. And with a solar water pump, that would be a lot easier.
And I've made enough of them out of pots, like a glazed pot, and you just buy the rubber stoppers, seal it, and you buy the pump separate, and it just, so you don't need to buy, quote, a fountain. You can just make your own out of anything as long as it's sealed.
Yeah. So. That's really great, because I love to recycle and repurpose things. Almost everything that touches my hand, I go,
Yeah.
and if I'm finished with it for what it was intended, I'm like, how can I use this?
And there's lots of things as long as you're creative and you could seal it. It works because you don't need to buy everything together.
That's a great
I
idea.
don't need a fountain with like a little boy peeing or whatever. There's
Yeah, I don't like those or the I call it the vomiting lion,
I'd rather
oh
have.
my gosh.
the spitting lion, if you will.
Yes. I mean, if I
Oh my
can't
gosh.
afford a Parisian wall fountain for $20,000,
Oh my gosh.
then
and also think about maintaining it. What's
Mhm.
going to be easy to maintain
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
And that's why, I think simply bird baths around,
Yeah.
your yard and landscape
Mhm.
are great. You just have to keep in mind they need to be cleaned. They
Yeah.
need to be replenished. In the summer, I have to replenish them every day.
Yeah.
I might not want to do that every day.
Correct. That is true. If there's a high evaporation amount and it's a shallow, that pump could be running dry pretty quick. So you got to keep an eye out for that. I read that you bought an infrared thermometer.
I love that thing.
And then so you just went around and you hit spots and it tells you what the temperature is. So what were some of the experiments you did in your yard and around, and what were the temperature gradients?
Yes. So, well, for example, what I did is I went right out. I mean, because sometimes I feel like let's test this.
Yeah.
Oh, let's check that, So I have to calm down, Cheryl. And, but what I did is I went around, like my driveway is this exposed aggregate concrete. And so, in the sun, it was 109 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to this area with some maple trees that the original owner installed, and they've got a beautiful canopy, but it's dappled sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even with that dappled sun or shade, the temperature of the concrete was 85 degrees.
Wow. That's a big difference.
A big difference.
Huge
and
difference.
and that wasn't even the heat of the day. And then I love going around, putting it on rock
Oh, God.
and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then you go and you put it, just click on mulch or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's eye-opening, and it's very impressive, because sometimes it's hard to even imagine, and maybe a lot of people don't even think about it, the heat of various surfaces. And that's where we get into hardscape, because hardscape is a great feature for bringing color into the garden. Hardscape meaning non-water consuming materials like flagstone and concrete. You can even have porous concrete. But, we need to think about this hardscape material is absorbing heat and it's giving it off. And think about what it's doing to those poor little soil organisms, because the soil heats up, the roots of the plant heat up. So when I see, massive areas of big rock and cobble, go put that infrared gun on that. And, they're inexpensive. I've seen them $8 or $9. Mine was just under 22, I think.
Uh-huh.
Battery operated, rechargeable batteries. And so I love that thing.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point about hardscaping, because I love the look, and I think a lot of people do, of the metal troughs as raised beds for your vegetables with the pea gravel in between. And all I could think about is how hot it would be in the summer, not just for the plants. Like you said, everything, you put your hand on that. Now imagine there's all the roots right on the inside are probably burnt. There's no microorganisms right on that inside. Imagine how hot that would be as you're working out there, because the heat is just bouncing off of that.
Yes.
So
and when they're sometimes I see them where people have painted them a light color or white. I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
But I'd like to take my infrared gun here and go to those and see just what the soil temperature is.
your friends are fearing. They're like, oh no, she's bringing her infrared thermometer.
Whip it out.
Yeah, whip it out and be like, hold on. So, I mean, that's why I do have wood raised beds, because it's cooling. I mean, wood's expensive. Yes. It's, I mean, you have to make sure it's sustainably sourced, and,
sure.
Luckily, they're not chopping. Well, I shouldn't say that. They're still chopping nice trees down.
But that's okay in the sense that, you're doing
Yes.
something with that wood that's helping your environment.
Yeah,
so.
but it's much cooler.
Yes.
amazing difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are
Well,
your
and all we
always-
have to do too is put our hand down into the soil and we can tell. You know,
So
we don't even need an infrared, thing for that. But
So what are your favorite materials and what do you think you mentioned the rocks. Yeah, when I see just large rocks, it's not just you, they're heating up probably at the top of the soil too a little bit.
yeah,
With that?
yeah, yeah, for
And they
sure.
retain heat for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And they give it off. And so that takes the cooling effect out of our gardens quickly, doesn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, because when I think of hardscape, I always describe having not massive areas like picture a driveway that's just all concrete. You know, you can do slices through it, remove some concrete, and plant it, and you can run a drip line in that open area between the two pieces of concrete. This could be a sidewalk or anything that's hardscape like that. And you can even get some concrete forms, other materials that have spaces where plants can go. And so that definitely helps to cool. And then, of course, shade trees. Shade trees are fabulous. And when we think about them, think about having a broad canopy. I realize a lot of people live in, smaller or closer homes, more densely, dense urban areas. And so some homes only have 5 feet between the two of them. So we think of large scale and small scale. So there's all different kinds of trees that can fit the bill. And, we have, of course, the Sacramento Tree Foundation. We have Roseville's Urban Forest Foundation, the BeWaterSmart.info website with Regional Water Authority has the Waterwise Gardening in the Gold Country. So lots of resources, but trees are trees and they do take time to grow.
Yes.
If we don't kill them during the mature process.
Yeah.
That's another whole topic, perhaps, Marlene.
Yeah. No, I mean, they can take a while and all trees are going to drop something.
Yeah.
But they are worth it because obviously if you've ever stood underneath.
Absolutely. And while those trees are growing, then I think of things like awnings that can be extended out to different, feet, 5, 10, 15, whatever. So there's that. Umbrellas can be a super reasonably priced option.
Yeah.
And, we don't have to go out and get $1,000 umbrella or whatever. And then all the colors are super too. You start getting into the cooler shades of color.
Yeah.
Versus I love warm colors, but when there's red and orange and bright yellows in a landscape, that's energizing and not calming as opposed to the nice blues and the soft hues of violet and so forth. And I love a green and white garden.
And that's fun.
Love green and white gardens.
That does sound pretty. Most people consider colors inside, and you sort of know, the joke like in hospitals and places of stress, they paint the walls the cooling colors, and but you don't really think of the colors you're adding outside as being cooling because you're like, well, I'm outside, but it's
very important.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, I just painted my courtyard a light aqua blue, and it used to be this pale yellow, and the change in color changed the whole environment amazingly.
Sounds lovely. It does. It sounds like it's the water body, the ocean. It's,
right. Yeah, it is that color.
And
that's great.
And flowers always look good against like a violet background. They do.
Yes. And there's a trend with darker colors for the home and walls and even fences. And I love it because I love those colors. But when you have that lighter background, then it really helps the green leaves, the bark of trees, the flowers be the showstoppers, and not, there's a great color wall,
So, but white if you think of like a white, that to me, when I think of a white wall, I'm thinking heat, even though it's light, I'm still getting the projection of heat. Is that correct? I'm not an art theory or color theorist at all, but it's like a cool blue to me and a cool green would be much cooler than a stark white wall.
I think it's the sterility of the white.
Do you think that's what it
that
is?
does not feel cool.
Yes, and I don't, and there are issues with light being reflected
Right.
from stark white walls. I mean, I'm not a paint expert, but there are some that have less reflective qualities to them.
Yeah.
But again, rather than a stark white, you could have a creamy white, softer and so forth. But I agree with you. I think that it gives us another platform, if you will, for bringing lovely colors into a space that we live in and we will enjoy for years to come. And like you, Bruce, paint is not all that expensive, not as inexpensive as it used to be, but paint is great. I love to paint. You wouldn't want to hire me though, because I'm very slow and meticulous.
Oh, and I'm the opposite. I will make the biggest mess with paint ever. But Bruce, you brought up a good point, and then you're talking about the colors is even though you painted the side of your house and you're sort of, people I think, my house is painted this color. I can't change the back wall a different color, but you can, right?
Yeah, in fact, because the expense of painting, my house when I bought it was painted basically this pale yellow, which I don't like at all. But the courtyard can't be seen from the street for the most part. And so my attitude is, why do I even have to have the front color be the same as the back color?
True. Yeah.
In my old house, the front was taupe and the back was tropical green and blue. And it was great. So you don't have to have one color.
Yeah. And you don't have to have your fence be just wood. You could paint that as well. So
I love painting fences.
Yeah, do you? Okay.
I have clients go, "Oh, I never thought about that."
Well, I don't think people really do, but it does make quite a difference. It can be quite the one. It could be quite there's the statement piece and the design piece, but then it can bring a cooling effect in. So you also mentioned we were talking about colors and no black mulch. That's sort of like a thing, is the colored mulch.
Yes. And years ago, when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's stunning! The green of the plants just pop." And in art studios and so forth, a lot of times black is used, and so then I started learning about it. The heat, again, as with rocks and boulders, not as much as absorb, but it's black. It absorbs heat, and it can give it off. And again, is that beneficial to the soil organisms and so forth and the plants? And then I think, where is that dye, this black dye, where is it coming from?
Yeah.
What is it? And oftentimes you can't get sheets with information from the suppliers. They will say they're not sure. And that might very well be the case. Yeah. And it's the same with dye, that orange and the red.
Yeah.
Have natural mulch. Have it of, like I like the arborist mulch, or the it's where the entire tree, the bark, the stems, the leaves, everything is chipped, and you have the material ends up being of different sizes, so it starts to decompose at different rates. And of course, we want to absolutely maintain a minimum of 3 inches of mulch. And it's amazing how much water is retained in the soil by using, like I say, a minimum of 3 inches of mulch. And so, I just think, let's stick with natural.
Yep.
Rule out the dyes and whatever kind of impact they might bring with them, and use your color in other places, as we've talked about, paint, decorative containers, decking, furniture, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Plus it breaks down and it helps build the soil.
Absolutely.
I'm going to let you. The funny thing is you mentioned pergolas and umbrellas, and Bruce and I had this discussion because he put a beautiful pergola in his courtyard.
Okay.
And
Which I love, by the way.
yeah, so I'm going to let you.
Good.
So because Bruce and I did a top 10 of money wasters, and you brought in the pergola, Bruce, even though you have a beautiful one and you use it. So I'm just going to let you two. I'm just going to sit back and listen to you guys discuss pergolas, the pros and the cons.
Well, my point about a pergola, it really isn't a money waster, but I felt that in terms of the way people expect a pergola to magically make their backyard cool, shady, and comfortable, that doesn't work. Because a pergola is essentially, it's a frame, and yeah, it does block a little bit of light, but there's a tremendous amount of light coming through there, and it's not going to make you feel amazingly comfortable without some additional help. So what I feel is pergola is great, but I actually feel you still need sunshade in our climate anyway. You still need sunshade on top of that to really decrease the light enough that you want to sit under there. You know, my pergola is in full sun, full southern sun. So if I had just put that up and nothing else, it would have been pretty, but it would have not made it that backyard, courtyard bearable.
So, Bruce, when you're talking about that, what is overhead? Just simply the beams, the wood or whatever the structure is made of?
So,
okay.
Exactly. So I feel that those pergolas, which are nothing but wood in our climate, in a southern exposure, are nice to look at, but they are not going to do the job that you want them to do if you want the place to be cool and comfortable at noon.
And you know what? I don't use those at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't use them at all. The pergolas, the overhead structures, whatever we want to call them. And there's a lot of different designs and styles and functions. You know, some of them have these louvered.
Yes, I've seen those.
On the top. Some of them have like fabric that's on wires that can be pulled out and retracted and so forth. You know, so I always have the shade overhead. And so some people, you know, even want a ceiling fan type of thing in there, and that's fine too. Yeah. But I never have just the wood. That's a very good point, Bruce, because I just don't think about it anymore. Yeah, you know, I don't. Yeah.
So that's why I feel they're a waste of money in the sense that if you just put a pergola up and are not willing to add the shade, and I have a ceiling fan where, plus I have a misting system.
Oh, nice.
So the fan blows around the mist, and the mist is attached to a control that allows it to only go on when it starts to dry. So for me, that makes this pergola useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
By itself, I mean, I think they're a waste of money if that's all you're going to do.
And I think I was thinking like Cheryl, that I never thought of a pergola without an extra covering because you just wanted to create the shade. But Bruce, you brought up the whole misting thing. So, you know, we're trying to cool a yard, but misting for sure works. But then people think, oh my gosh, we're wasting water. But if you're really only doing it, if you're not constantly doing it, you're only doing it on the hot days, it could really change the environment. And I use a mister for my cats.
And if you, because the cats lick themselves, that's like, by the way, speaking of transpiration and evaporation, that's one of the ways they cool themselves. But the misting system that I have, it does allow more water to go out than I'd like because it's hard to adjust. But basically, it's just a cantilever. Cantilever gets wet from the mist. It turns the misting system off. It gradually evaporates, turns the misting system on for about a minute, and the process just continues. To avoid it going on too much in case it sort of sometimes just doesn't turn off well, I have it run like an hour and a half every 3 hours. So that way it allows the area to dry. But it makes the area actually sometimes a little too cool when the mist hits you.
Wow. I see when the misters hit you. Yeah. But,
and that's interesting because I have used misters on one of my sitting areas and because I have huge, very mature ficus trees.
Oh, nice.
And so I take them out onto the deck every spring and summer and bring them back into the house in the winter. That's fun.
Absolutely.
But I have misters around that area. And if I turn it on for as much as 10 minutes max, that's all I really need to do. And, you know, it depends on what misters you have. You know, some of them have like put out 2 gallons of water per hour per nozzle. But there's a lot of different variables there. So that's worth checking into because the amount of water that is used can depend on type and number of nozzles, what the flow rate is, the water pressure, and all of that. But yeah, just a short runtime can often take care of that.
And then if it is windy and it's such a fine mist, you watch it blow away from you.
Yeah, that's a problem because when the Delta breeze does hit, then if my mistress is still on because it's still hot out, it just blows it away. But I hear my cat in the background.
Wait, he's got opinions. He's got opinions. He's like, turn the misters on, Daddy.
That's right. But I still think the misters are worth having. I use them mostly for my tropical plants to keep them humid. And I did notice the difference in humidity was 20% away from the misters and 45% at the misters, which while low for tropicals is still a lot better.
It's enabling you to at least eke them out where they're not dying. Yeah.
And then what I also did is the sitting area has a separate, it's the same mister system, but I have a controller. I can turn off the sitting area so that just the plants get misted. And that way, when there's company, they don't want to be under the mist. So I think, and so that's also very helpful to I did it as an afterthought and it was a great idea, I think, in retrospect.
No, I mean, it does help. It's just the whole water conservation thing. Because really, I mean, sitting by misters is really cooling. But then there's that, when should I run that?
Well, that's why they go on and off. It saves water. Nobody wants to be soaking wet.
No, exactly.
Anyway.
No.
Nor do the plants.
Yeah. No.
And I think, I'm using a lot less than 2 gallons per hour. I think a lot of these misters are like, 0.1 gallon per hour. They're very fine mists.
Yeah.
Which means they do clog up if you don't have a filter.
Yes.
That's a different story.
Yeah. I have really hard water and everything gets coated in white.
Well, and when you're mentioning the misting and the wind, I mean, think of our sprinklers.
I know.
Similar. We don't want our sprinklers on when it's really windy.
Yeah. I want to change course a little bit. And this wasn't mentioned in the article, but it just sort of popped into my head as I'm visualizing a cooler landscape. And you had mentioned you love a green and a white. And that is very soothing. And then for some reason in my mind, what popped up is just very thin, wispy, waving plants. And I went, you know what? When I think of that versus thinking of a large leaf like bird of paradise or something very rigid, I get a hot and a cooling feeling.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, is that something you play with in your landscapes? I just picture grasses just seem, even though a lot of grasses are drought tolerant, I still think of these wispy plants being more cooling looking. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think of, when I picture deer grass, for example, and the inflorescences, just swaying in the breeze and so forth. And just like with the Carl Forster Calamagrostis, I love.
Yeah.
Just punctuating gardens. But I do think that that's another visual for feeling cool because it makes you feel the breeze and visually in addition to, your body, your skin feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like even though I think of larger leaves, tropical, that's cooling, but I think of some of these more harsher large, I don't know, I just keep coming back, the bird of paradise leaf like that. But even lavender seems cooler because it has that gray sort of soft twinge. Your cat wins the award, Bruce.
He can drive one to drink.
Is it dinner time?
It's like my ears. It's an ear piercing meow if you're right near him, which I'm not right now.
I mean, did you prepare by feeding him and talking to him beforehand?
The cat wants to go into this plant room. Which still has plants in it, so he's not allowed there because he'll knock them over.
And eat
he
them.
He sits by there and meows until he just gets bored. And I've been taught by cat people, maybe one, which is that you have to. He just walked away. You have to just ignore it, which you don't want to do, because that's how he'll slowly realize.
And this is the second cat I've only been afraid of in my life. So
I've got one for you, Marlene.
Yeah.
His name is Bubba.
Is he? And does he attack?
He can be sweet sometimes, and then at the next moment he is slicing your arm.
Is it
Marlene, I wanted to ask you to explain to me a little bit more about what you were saying with the bird of paradise leaves and the larger leaves.
Well, they just seem hotter. And I don't know if it's because I can't
Hotter.
visualize the wind blowing through it. And I think it's just
Gotcha.
the movement and the soft grays and the
Yes.
soft pale blues.
Yes.
Even though people think of Bird of Paradise, they get you that tropical look. For me, it just sort of
good
brings
point.
up this more and and also just like, shrubs that are pruned into a harsh square versus something that's natural. Like, you see the viburnums and they're pruned into a hedge versus a viburnum that's allowed to be in its natural shape. It's
Right.
just these things to me trigger cool versus harsh. And that to me
Yes.
is temperature as well. So I was just
That's a-
wondering if just plant colors, we already talked about cooling, but
Sure.
also if like structure of plants. And
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
because you mentioned
Absolutely.
some
Because,
of the,
the trees,
Mhm.
depending on the size of their leaves and so forth and the density of the canopy, there's beautiful movement.
Mhm.
And so, we've talked about sound in the, in
Yeah.
the cooling landscape in the summer. Now this is great, with the plants, the trees, and like one of the trees that seems to be really popular, right now is the I'm trying to think of it.
Is it the fringe tree?
The fringe tree. I love the fringe tree,
Okay.
but the Parkinsonia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The desert
Palo
Museum,
Verde.
Palo Verde.
Yeah.
Palo Verde.
Mm-hmm.
It is beautiful when it has the yellow leaves on it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not a dense crown, right?
No.
That is just really pretty and gives you great movement. But I also think we need to have trees with more of a denser canopy so that we're getting that shade, because
Yeah.
you're not going to get a lot of shade
No.
from,
Right.
the Palo Verde, but you certainly are going to get beautiful movement.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we bring up the Palo Verde at work. We lost 2 of them
Mhm.
within the same spring. And it was after a really heavy rain year. Of course, they're incredibly drought tolerant.
Mhm.
So they just didn't like those heavy rains. So I hate to see people get these mature trees
Yeah.
and then we have an inundation and they plant them in clay soils and it's sort of like ceanothus. They do fine. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they just go weak. Beautiful,
Yeah.
worth planting. Just saying they may not be the longest lasting trees in a clay soil. That's just
No, and I don't use them a lot.
Mhm.
I really like them a lot when they first became popular.
Yeah.
If I do use them, if the clients want them, I go with a single
Okay.
trunk
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
the multi-trunk that I
Yeah.
found splits out sometimes.
Yeah. Yes. And I agree that it's not planted as for a shade tree. It's sort of a statement tree.
Yes.
It's a foundation plant. They're
Focal point.
beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. Their bark is amazing. Their bark is really cooling because it's a green. But yeah. So what are some of your favorite trees? I'm just throwing you on the spot right there for this one. But I'm
For
sure
me or for Bruce?
for you, besides the
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Well, another one, because I'm always thinking of water use. And what's this tree or plant's water use classification? And so I really like the red push pistache.
red push. Okay, how is that different than
Yes. So if we
yeah.
think about the Pistacia chinensis, I don't
Chinese
do well
pistache.
with
Yeah.
pronunciations, but it's the Keith Davy, so that's the male that doesn't have the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a great tree. So it's a pistache, but what I like about this one, it gets about 25 to 40 feet tall and 20 to 40 feet wide. And the new growth that comes out, I wish I could show you.
Yeah.
Because the new growth that comes out is kind of this bright orange, bronzy, reddish color. So you're getting
Gorgeous.
color in the leaves in the spring.
Yeah.
And then, they mature to the green, and then you get the color of the leaves in the fall as well. And so that's one of my favorites these days.
Nice.
For a, a full sun, low water plant.
Mhm.
But you also, or tree rather, you also mentioned, I think, the Chinese fringe.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
that's deciduous as well.
Mhm.
A low, really, a moderate water, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Some people say it can take less. My experience is that it's a moderate water use tree, but the flowers are incredible. These white, and they do really are fringy,
Yes.
similar to Allure pedalum. And but anyway, those are just, I love those two.
Small trees, though.
I've
Small.
That's one
always,
of my favorite trees, actually.
The
Is
fringe
it?
tree, Bruce?
And they smell good too.
They
in the spring.
do. Yeah.
yeah, and it's underused. Both of those trees are underused. So I hope that they get some traction. And plus, they're both deciduous. They lose their leaves. And so, they can give us a lot of shade and cooling in the summertime. And then in the winter, when they don't have their leaves on them, we're getting the warmth of the sun, for
And they're
our
very
home.
cold hardy too. I mean, the reason I was surprised until I looked it up again while we were talking is back in New York, my neighbor had one, and we go down to 0 degrees occasionally there. It's Chinanthus retusus, and it's a wonderful tree for cold climates too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just not the most, it's not super big. So it's not going to be a full,
No,
but if you have a
it's a small
small
tree.
yard, it's a nice tree.
It is great. Yeah, it is a good selection for smaller yards. That's true. Yeah. And and of course I love oak trees. One of my favorites is the cork oak. They're slow growing. They're slow growing. But they're wonderful. And so we can enjoy all these other trees, but be sure to plant an oak if we can, because they provide so much habitat for our creatures, and birds and all really need them.
Yeah.
And of course, we want more and more natives in our landscapes. I will say I'm not a purist. I do believe in low water use, a mix of climate adapted Mediterranean type trees and plants. But I always want to include California native plants. And I am finding more and more success with keeping my zones like hydrozones. So an area that's all low water use plants that love full sun, that's one grouping of plants and trees that are on their own valve for irrigating them as they're needed. And I am finding, though, that the zones where I stay true to this one is all natives. That is the easiest to manage. And I have found that when we get snow up here, which is not often, but we do, it's the natives that spring back beautifully after all these whiplash climate conditions that we're experiencing.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Anyway,
yeah.
I'm going on a little
No,
tangent
that's
there.
fine. I give a talk, Mediterranean gardening, and I start off saying natives are great. But I see a lot of people who get disenchanted with their yard that was transformed into just natives because either they went and they picked the plants and they weren't quite aware, or they just grabbed an e-gardener who was like, natives, here you go, this is what I bought. And they're not, even though they're natives, they're not all suitable for standard garden soils.
And California is a big state.
It's a big state.
They have to be
local.
And that's what I like about the CalScape, California Native Plant Society, their CalScape website, because you can enter in your address and it will give you a list of local native plants to use. And I think that's really cool.
And plus I think they do, a lot of our natives are, our spring is the peak time for many of our blooms. And then a lot of plants tend to go a little, quote, summer dormant because it's so dang hot. And some people want more interest throughout the summer. Aloes are great because they bloom early winter. I don't need any water. So I'm not a purist at all. But if someone wants to do all natives, I say, fine, just be prepared because some of them are short-lived and so,
and also, I don't expect them to be not needing water if you want them to look good. I think it's really important to qualify. You can have a native garden, an entirely native devoted garden, but if you cultivate it, water it, and treat it more as a perennial garden per se, you're going to have a lot nicer looking garden, but you're still going to use so much less water. But I think people who expect it to be carefree are in for a rude surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, no landscape is completely carefree. The other design tip that I would suggest is I use a high percentage of evergreen natives.
Oh, yeah.
And so that way, when all the ones that are flowering and the monkey flowers and everything that I just love, after their prime, showtime, then we have beautiful evergreens out there, the coffee berries and, the arbutus trees and
the toyons and
toyons. Oh my gosh, yes.
I love that variegated coffee. The is it the Ramnus Alternifolia? Am I getting that wrong? I had a variegated coffee in my life. It was just amazing.
I don't know it. I have to look that up.
I could be wrong that it was a coffee. It's been years ago, but I want to say it was a variegated Ramnus, and it was just amazing. And I agree that a lot of the evergreen natives are just they're troopers. They don't care, and a lot of them produce berries that are great for foraging for the birds and wildlife in the winter. So I like that concept of having evergreens and then incorporating some of the flowering Mediterraneans and natives, so you have interest year round.
Yes,
as well.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too long because we could talk forever. Bruce and I could talk forever. Sometimes I'm like, okay, we got to stop. And then as plant people, we just keep talking and talking.
I know.
But where can, so we mentioned that bewatersmart.info has a lot of good information. And and you mentioned Calscape as a site as well. And for Treeless, Sacramento Tree Foundation has a great list of trees. Any other places that you'd recommend? Anything that you want to tout personally?
Yeah, for sure. So with the city of Roseville, I consult and work with them a lot, and I just love them, as well as the Regional Water Authority and so many of our water providers. But they have what's called the Water Smart plant list for the Sacramento region.
Okay.
And it's just roseville.ca.us/plant list.
Okay.
And there are all kinds of, there's lists, broken down by our top favorite, trees and shrubs and so forth. Then there's a list of deciduous trees, evergreen trees, shrubs that are large, medium, grasses, etc., bulbs. And on the common name, you can click on it and it takes you to Google Photos.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the bewatersmart.info has that water-wise gardening for the Gold Country, which is wonderful too.
And then
we have a lot of wonderful resources.
We do. And UC Davis Arboretum has their all-star lists that, so there's a lot of good information, and you don't need to live right in that city to glean information off of it. But I always do tell people, we're coming from what zone are you in up in Cool?
I'm 7.
7. Wow. Yeah. Okay. But we still get the same summers, hot and dry.
Oh,
so,
my goodness, yes.
It's just different winter.
Cool is not cool in the summer.
No, it's not. Just different temperatures. And because I'm zone 9 and Bruce, you're zone 9, right?
9B.
And then there's 14 around here as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the sunset zone.
Yeah, sunset.
Yes.
No one uses poor sunset zones anymore, which I guess is okay because USDA is across the board in sunset. But
and you make a really good point, Marlene, that, there are a lot of options, and get to know, it's the basics. It's the fundamentals. Pay attention to your soil, your exposure, how much water they need, and then apply what you learn to your landscape.
Yeah.
The city of Roseville has been offering to residents for Roseville and throughout the region, open to everybody. It's called the Green Gardener at Home.
Mm-hmm.
And they offer it usually beginning every February, and it's 7 2-hour classes. We talk about soil, irrigation, right plant, right place, edible gardening, pruning, integrated pest management, and then we have a couple of Saturday hands-on.
Okay, so, that's great.
And so that's one thing, there are so many opportunities, workshops and webinars.
Yeah, and every county has a master gardener.
Yes,
And
I
those
love
classes
master
are,
gardeners.
yeah, and those classes, they're just so helpful in workshops, and it runs the gamut what it is. And
Mhm.
so really it's endless possibilities of where you could pick up this information.
Yes.
And as we all know, it's trial and error. You're going to kill things no matter
Yeah,
what.
you have to get used to that.
You have
And
to get used to
I
that.
try to say, forgive yourself now and go forward.
Yeah, there you go. I always say, I didn't kill the plant. Something else did. And I just have to
died.
learn from it. Unless I sit there and watch it in its pot and I don't water it. I'm like, oh, I'll get to that plant. Oh, I'll get to the, but anyways, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining. I learned a lot, and it's good to focus outside of just, just we're saving water. We're creating a beautiful, we
Mhm.
also want to be able to go out and enjoy the space in the summer too.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Right.
and it is nice to create an oasis, and it doesn't have to, you don't have to have
Love
this
that.
swimming pool with this, amazing gazebo or whatever, which actually
Right.
could be a little hotter feeling even then, full of
Right.
plants. So I like these tips and stuff. And the article is on bewatersmart.info if you guys want to read the whole article.
Mhm.
But thank you for joining me. Bruce, you want to say goodbye? To our
Goodbye.
audience,
Thank
to
you.
our audience.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. And everyone, until next time, happy gardening.